almost there. No way. What is this? You're tuned in to the Eyes Open podcast, where secrets aren't safe and we see it all.
Now, not too long ago, I did do something that was NASA based, like the, the moon landing we talked about. And then we kind of touched on it a little bit in the Flat Earth episode where we talked about, the whole space is fake concept, stuff like that. But I've never actually, it's kind of surprising when I do think about it, I've never actually done a show about NASA and the symbolism, the occult symbolism and numerology and stuff that's really intertwined into NASA like crazy. It really is. And I'm actually pretty surprised when I thought about it. And the reason I came up with the idea to do the show was actually one of our viewers came up with the idea because what they had actually sent me. Now, if this person, I want to send a big shout out to this person for sending me what they sent me. And I'm going to show you guys what they sent me here in a second. But I don't want to throw their name out there. If, they have no problem, commenting and, letting everybody know who they are, then I'll let them decide that. But I didn't want to just throw their name out there. So I just want to let you know, I really much appreciate you sending this stuff over to me, because when I got sent this, it was very fascinating what this person sent me. But not only was it fascinating, but like I said, I haven't really dug into NASA yet, and there's so much to unpack with NASA in general. So pretty much what this person, this viewer, had sent me is Apollo flight decals. Okay, they're I'll put them up on the screen and show you guys. These are the Apollo flight decals that this person had sent me. And from my research into these, because this person told me, they also gave me these writings that I'll put up here real quick too, so you could see what I'm talking about, and I'll read a little bit of it. These writings explain what these decals are and what they represent. But the thing is, from my research looking into these decals, is I found it pretty fascinating that the design themselves was designed by the crew. That's what, you do an internet search or you go looking into this and research it. It shows that NASA allowed the crews to, from what they say, design these, which, I find interesting to say the least, because me being the person I am and I know what I know, there's so much esoteric and occultic type stuff that's intertwined into logos. For example, I forget who said this, but they pretty much said the logos and symbols that we embrace in modern society would send a medieval peasant running in terror. So what essentially that's saying is, see, back in the day, people couldn't read. That's where symbols originally came from, because people had to use symbols to communicate. People couldn't read. Reading was a luxury. That's what a lot of people don't realize. If you could read, like, for example, even in the late 1800s, if you could read, you were considered, it showed you were affluent, that you had to have come from an affluent family, because most people didn't read. They weren't able to read. So the education system, I already did a whole episode about that. That's a whole nother topic, but the education system to teach, kids to read and stuff like that didn't start till, the turn of the century, from, the 1800s to the 1900s. And then Rockefeller set up the school system. But yeah, so symbols people have no idea how, important symbols are. And it's the oldest form of communication, was even going back to the cavemen days. But what people don't realize is the people that rule the world, they still communicate with not just each other, but with their God through these type of symbolism, this type of symbolism that they put out there. So that's why when I hear something like they're saying, oh, these, flight decals, they allowed the NASA crew to make them up themselves. I don't buy that personally. But also, I find it interesting. So I'm going to pull it up again and show you. So here's these Apollo flight decals. Now, there's one thing before I lead into this. I find this interesting because I look at the numbers and stuff. I count the numbers on stuff, and it always comes up very interesting when you look into the numbers of things. Now, at the top of the page, you can see it says Apollo flight decals. Now, the lettering is Apollo is 6, flight is 6, and decals is what? 6. So it's 666 right there at the top. Because, like I've told you, the occult, these people that practice this type of stuff, that are Luciferians, they speak through code like this. They speak through symbolism, they speak through numerology, and it's all right in front of our faces. You just have to look for it. But I'm going to show you something else, for example. Now, nobody can tell me different, okay? You could freeze frame the decals I put up there for you, and it shows it in one of these, and I believe it's what? Apollo 16. And Apollo 16, there is where you see the serpent's tongue. Now, look at here. So look at NASA's logo. Nobody's going to tell me that logo coming through the two slits right there, that's a serpent's tongue. Okay, so it's representation of the serpent, the snake, Satan, Lucifer. But think about it. All of these missions are named after pagan gods, like Apollo. Okay, all of these missions were named Apollo. And then people wonder. So you have to look back and see who was Apollo. So Apollo in paganism in ancient Greece was known as one of the main deities and gods, okay? He was known as representing the sun. He was known for archery, but he was known as the bringer of light. Now, just like we talked about, the serpent, Satan, everything, who's known as the bringer of light? Okay? Lucifer. So I find that to be very interesting. Now, the other thing I find interesting is if you go into Revelation 9:11, this has been talked about a lot. It's Abaddon or Apollyon. All right? People try to say, oh, there's no correlation with Apollyon and Apollo. Well, I disagree. I absolutely think there's a correlation there. So I'm going to go ahead and make the connection between Apollo and Apollyon that's in the book of Revelation and Revelation 9:11. So when I look at that, I look at the numbers and I'm like, okay, so we have Apollyon as the destroyer in Revelation 9:11. It speaks of Apollyon being the destroyer. So if we go back and look at these Apollo flight decals on Apollo 9, okay, if you guys want to go back, snapshot, you'll probably have to do that. Go back, snapshot, but I'll show it to you one more time so you guys can see this. I'm going to go ahead and leave it up here. So Apollo 9 shows a missile. All right? Because look, it shows a missile. Now, Apollo 11, so we have 9/11. That's where you get 9/11 from. So before we even get into that, I'm going to explain to you why. This is one of the reasons why 9/11 was picked on 9/11. I mean, they even built the freaking Pentagon on 9/11 in 1942 or something. Come on, guys. There's too many number coincidences here. 9/11 is the representation, because see, 9 plus 1 plus 1 still brings you to 11. 9/11 represents, okay, 9 is humans, 10 is God. Okay, 10 is completion. In the Kabbalistic mysticism that these people worship, 10 is considered God to them. All right? So they jump over God. That's why they believe they're higher than God, just like Lucifer thought he was higher than God. So 9/11 represents that jump. So that's why you'll see 9/11 all over in different stuff. And then, like I said, in numerology, it also adds up. 9 plus 1 plus 1, 11. So if we look at these decals, all right, it shows Apollo 9 with a missile, okay? And if you look at Apollo 11, it shows an eagle with an olive branch. Now, what I interpret that into symbolically, you have the bald eagle, which represents the United States, with a olive branch, okay? An olive branch is a representation of peace, okay? You, like they say, go ahead and extend the olive branch to that person, is like burying the hatchet in a sense. So to me, the eagle holding the olive branch, that shows that there's a reason for there to be peace, because some type of war is happening. So an eagle with an olive branch, to me, represents a war. So think about that. Apollo 9 and Apollo 11, you have a missile, and then you have a hawk, you have a bald eagle, showing that it's holding an olive branch, which would be the representation of the United States. So if we look into, all right, Apollo, let's look into the numerology here behind some of these Apollo missions. Okay. So you have, we'll start off with Apollo 9. Okay. Apollo 9 took off on March 3rd of 1969. Okay. So that is 3 and 3. That's the 33. There's your 33. They love to put their little occult numerology in here. It came back, guess when? On March 13th. There's your 13 that they love to use so ever so much. And as I explained, the two main missions that everybody always talks about is what? Apollo 11, which was the moon landing, and Apollo 13. They even made the movie about it. And if you notice, like in Apollo 13, there was an explosion. Okay? So it's symbolic. Now you see, you have the 33, which is in Apollo 9, and then you have, it came back on the 13th. So let's look into the Apollo 11 mission. Okay? Apollo 11 left on 7/16 of 1969. So that means you have a 7 plus a 16, which in numerology, you add the 6 and the 1. That's 7. So you have a 7/7. So here's the 7. So if you follow my show, you know how I show you guys this all the time. You have your 11, you have your 13, you have your 7, and then, because essentially you have your, above all, your master numbers, which is 11, 22, 33, because they jump in 11s like that. So you can even look this up. Master numbers are 11, 22, and 33. So you'll see those all over the place. That's a given. But you'll notice 13, 9/11 pops up a lot. 15 is huge, because 15 essentially represents, 5 plus 1 is a 6. But you'll notice that's why, like, they had that big thing going around. The kids are going, 6, 7, 6, 7. You'll notice 7 and 6 all over the place. That's why I'm showing you, like in Apollo 11, it took off, right? Okay. 7, 7 essentially, because it's 7/16. You add 6 plus 1 is 7, so it took off on the 7/7. Now, it came back, all right, on 7/24. So you have 7, and then you have 4 plus 2 on the 24th. That is 6. There's your 7/6/6/7. They put it right there in the dates. But that's not even the craziest one. All right. Let's move on to Apollo 7 before I get to the finale here. So Apollo 7 took off on October 11th. Big coincidence there. And it returned on October 22nd. There's your master numbers, 11 and 22. So, and how many days does that make it that was gone? 11 days. So, we through with the coincidences yet, or shall I keep going, ladies and gentlemen? So, Apollo, but here we go. So let's go jump in. They're all with the 13s and everything. Let's jump into Apollo 13. So Apollo 13, it took off on, guess what? April 11th. Shocker. Took off on April 11th. And if you notice, so April's the 4th month, you do 4, 5, 6. Okay? 4 plus 1 plus 1. So it would be 6. There's your 6 again. It always deducts down, always. But guess when they returned, because of the explosion and everything that happened, they returned. Wow, Apollo 13 returned on April 13th. Again, shocker. But like I said, so, and even per NASA, what they say, okay, the Apollo 13 patch these decals that I've shown you guys, per NASA, what they said, okay, the Apollo 13 is a representation, okay, of Apollo. Okay, there's 3 horses that look like Pegasus, okay, and they say that's the chariot Apollo rode on, of the winged horses. So it is a representation of Apollo bringing the light of knowledge. All right. Now, where else does this sound familiar? Where a light bearer was bringing knowledge. Now, when mankind fell in the Garden of Eden, the serpent, the tongue that's in the NASA logo, the serpent tempted Eve with fruit from the what? The tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So here, and this is all, and that's per NASA, what they said, what that logo actually means. Now, if you look deeper into this, people can. Robert T. McCall was also a big part of this. If you look into him, he's a big designer for NASA. Didn't strictly work for NASA, but he did a lot of, their work for them. So, but people need to realize that the fact that they use all of these dates in this symbolism, I mean, it's beyond coincidence, and a lot of people don't realize that. And the fact that they name these missions Apollo, okay, and we've already seen the deception with, for example, you can go back and check this out on my page when I did a real breakdown about the Challenger mission, where the Challenger blew up. And all those people are still alive. The one guy has an identical twin brother, same teeth and everything. He has like a gap in his teeth or whatever. The black guy happened to have a twin. Then there's another guy with the exact same name who's like a professor. If you look into him, every single person, and they have the same names, mind you. They went and found every single person that was supposed to have died in the Challenger explosion, all alive right now. They found them all. And there was one of them, it was pretty wild. Like, he owned some company, and the logo of the company was like a cow with the, smoke swirling from it like it was a rocket. So they found that to be pretty interesting as well. But all you have to do is go look at it on my page. I did a reel about it that was talking about how the whole deception with the Challenger mission alone. And for people that really want to see, because they put it and I've always told you guys this, they put it in the movies. Go watch the movie, for the people who haven't, Capricorn 1. Okay? I won't spoil it for you. If you want to see the deception of NASA, go watch the movie Capricorn 1, because they're telling you right there in the movie what they do. And the truth is, because I don't care what nobody says. All right? I go based off of what the Bible says. The Bible says the earth is fixed on its foundation and it cannot be moved. For anybody that's built anything, they know a foundation does not move. All right? The Bible also says that he separated the waters above from the waters below. So that means what you're looking at up there, and it speaks of the firmament. It's the firmament. It's the waters above and the waters below. So think about it. That's why the sky is blue. That's water up there. That's the firmament. They cannot leave, and they know this. Okay, but they feed this to you guys. And like I said, just watch the movie Capricorn 1 and you'll see what I'm talking about. But this type of symbolism, NASA's ripe with it. And they tried to dispel the fact that NASA in Hebrew, they said Nasa or whatever it was. It was either Hebrew or Greek. I forget what they had said, or Latin. Was it Latin? Somebody will be able to correct me on that one. But in a certain language, NASA means, I believe it was Hebrew, means to deceive. And they were trying to say, oh, no, that's actually a different word. It didn't actually mean that. That's not actually where NASA comes from. But I don't find that hard to believe either. I know NASA it's Latin. NASA in Latin is nose, which is interesting when you think about it, because, see, you know, they're speaking about life in general with the nose, because, see, when God made Adam, he breathed life into him. So we breathe with our nose, okay? We inhale, all right? Through our, well, I mean, you inhale through your mouth, but the nose, if you look up the symbolic meaning behind the nose, I find that kind of interesting. If you look at, go to Google Translator, put Latin to English, and put in NASA and see what comes up. So I find that interesting as well. But all of this, if people would simply, instead of looking at all this other trivial stuff that means shit, it really doesn't mean anything. If you look into things like this, you will see all of this type of symbolism around you and what these people actually worship. And people be like, oh, well, what's the point? You know, what are we going to do about it? That's the biggest one I always get too. It doesn't mean you have to necessarily jump up and, you know, start a freaking revolution. It's just simply knowing these things, okay? So you can raise awareness to other people, because the illusion that we've all been living in is slowly starting to deteriorate and break down. People are waking up more and more every day to the lies, to the deception, and to the fact that we are all ruled by some very, very evil people. That literally, I don't care what nobody says, it's what I believe. They take their orders from Lucifer himself. I'm telling you. If people will only open their eyes to the world around them, you will see how crazy things actually are. And the fact that when they say that the truth is stranger than fiction, that's an understatement.